All right, y'all. Boom. I just want to give my thoughts and reactions to the college football playoff bracket and um, how I feel like it played out, how like the committee did. You know, to start off with the most debated topic point was SMU versus Alabama. Now, for me, I feel like that the committee did it right. They put in SMU instead of Bama because honestly, you can't punt. They had SMU ahead of Bama year long, the entire year. So to have them fall behind Bama because of an extra game made absolutely no sense to me. Alabama lost. The biggest selling point was that Bama had a tougher schedule, but um, they lost. They got blown out by Oklahoma, and they lost to Vanderbilt. Two bad teams. You lost two bad teams. You're undeserving of the playoffs. And when you say it out loud, oh, Bama lost a third of their games and made the playoff. Like, you just sound stupid if you do it like that. Whereas SMU, they have a top flight offense. Their defense has been very good. They've been blowing out teams similar to Indiana in a sense where the schedule isn't good, but if you do have an inferior schedule and you blow out teams and take care of business, you should be rewarded for that. Just as much as any other win. So, to have SMU, they handled business throughout the season. The only reason they got to two losses was because they made it to the conference game and then they lost closely. Now, if the ACC championship finished out how the first half went, and let's say SMU lost by like 21-28, you can make an argument because then they would have a blowout loss and it would be like very noticeable in the icons in the eye test. Okay, maybe this team isn't ready for the playoffs, or let's reevaluate it basically. But to have such a close loss and Bama, like, they didn't do anything. It would be a back door. Why should a team ever have to back door and walk into the playoff? You should have to earn it, regardless of record. And we knew that going in, that with the 12-team playoff, more likely than not, there was going to be debate about 2-loss and 3-loss team, just because it's a bigger field. Just like with like a 4-team, you're basically debating 0 and 1 losses, like because no 2-loss team ever made it. So the 4-team, you were skinning hairs, and the same thing here with the 12-team. But I think they made the right decision with SMU. SMU clearly, like, resume for resume, yes, Alabama's probably better. That they have more ranked wins, obviously a harder schedule, and better signature wins. But it's just the losses are so bad, and they're unforgivable. It is absolutely unforgivable to lose to Oklahoma at the end of the season. Now, me personally, I don't necessarily. I have a problem with them over Miami too, matter of fact. But also, one key point when the committee was talking about putting Bama over Miami was that Bama had a better end to the season because they've won 2 of the last 3 when they played FCS Mercer, average Auburn, and a shitty ass Oklahoma. Like, no fucking shit. Their SEC schedule was hard, yes, but at the end of the season they played bums. They played bums. They lost to a bum team. They got blown out, and they should get punished for it. But that's not to here nor there. I believe they made the right decision putting SMU in, and also, if they took SMU out, it would have, like, that's Pandora's box, because now conference championships are out the window. Why would I ever want to play in a conference championship if I can go from 8 to like 12 or 13 and out of it? Why would I? If they put SMU out, then next year, if you're a conference team, if you made the conference and you're like the 9 or 10 seed, just sit out. Just sit out and force the committee to be like, oh, teams that didn't play in conference championship weekend can't move. Okay, so if I'm not playing in it, I'm going to purposely sit out just so I can stay in. It would have been absolute mayhem if they took SMU out just for losing an extra game, and to Bama of all teams too. Like, that would have been a really bad look for them. But that's not to here nor there. Clemson beat them, so now Clemson is in, SMU is in. Another thing is when people try to diminish SMU, they're like, oh, they have no good wins, they don't have a ranked win, or their best win is Duke. Mind you, Texas doesn't have a single ranked win. Penn State doesn't have a ranked win, but Indiana doesn't have a ranked win. People shit on Indiana for that, but I'm looking mostly at Texas and Penn State. Flip my mind. Even Notre Dame. Notre Dame does not have a good schedule either. Yes, they beat Texas A&M, who would be ranked for most of the season week 1. As the final result poll, I'm pretty sure Notre Dame doesn't have a ranked win either. But everyone wants to bash, SEC, the conference is so hard. Texas has the exact same resume as SMU. The exact same resume. The 2 ranked teams that they faced all year, they lost to, given both to Georgia in the conference championship game and once in the regular season. Same with SMU. Lost to ranked BYU in the regular season, lost to a ranked Clemson in the championship game. There was no debate about Clemson being in at the 5 or, however high they made it. But there's a debate about, SMU. That's just bias. That's brand bias. And yes, I know Texas passes the eye test more legitimately than SMU. Texas is probably a better team. But you can't use that argument for SMU about no ranked wins when there are a plethora of teams in the playoffs that don't have ranked wins either. Because if you were to play that card, then Texas should be on the bubble. Penn State should be on the bubble. Notre Dame should be on the bubble. Why are we putting these teams in such a high echelon for just their logo? That's what it seems like to me, because there's no outcry for Texas. Absolutely none. When you turn into a First Take or whatever it is, and they're comparing SMU and Bama, there's a 99% chance they bring up ranked wins. And there's a 99% chance they don't bring up the fact that Texas doesn't have one, because that ruins the SEC little agenda that they got going on. It's ridiculous, because I can argue that also in the regular season only, that Penn State and Indiana have the exact same resume in the regular season. They both had 1 loss to Indiana. But throughout the season, Penn State was notably like 6 spots higher than Indiana. Why? Because of the logo on their helmet. Because of the brand. And it's clear as day that the committee wants these big brands in. But if you're gonna, you gotta respect the resume at some point. If you want to have Penn State and Indiana in with very similar resumes, you got to have them within 2 spots of each other. Texas should not be that high. I'm sorry. Are they a good team? Yeah. They're the Vegas favorite to win it all with no ranked wins, and no one is talking about it. It's ridiculous. The outcry for, for the Indianas and the SMUs of the world, or the Boise States of the world even, when these powerhouses, they also have cupcake schedules. These powerhouses also don't have impressive resumes either. You could almost argue that BYU has a better resume than like 3 or 4 of these playoff teams, because BYU has 2 ranked wins. So that's just bewildering to me about the public perception of some of these teams and some of these brand biases, because looking at the bracket right now, Penn State is at 6, SMU at 11, Clemson at 12. So, all right, hold on. Let me run it back. My bad. You got Ohio State at the 8, playing Tennessee at the 9, and the winner gets Oregon. Speaking of Oregon, Oregon has the toughest draw out of any of the teams with a bye. Without a doubt, Oregon has the toughest draw. They face the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee. That's ridiculous. When you're the 1 seed, you deserve to get the easiest matchup possible, right? Why should I have to face these 2 powerhouses in my first game back? Like, is the bye really worth it at that point? And it's just like confusing. I feel like it was more of a setup issue than an actual like it wasn't the committee, the voters' fault. It was more the higher ups making the bracket. It was their fault for the most part. that because Oregon is going to have to go through the winner of that game. Let's just say all the favorites went out. In this whole bracket, let's hypothetical. Oregon would have to face Ohio State, probably Texas. So Ohio State in their first game. It would be Texas in their second game. Probably Georgia. Like, Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia. That's crazy. Why? I'm the best. I was the best team all season. I was undefeated. I won my conference. And I have to go through that gauntlet. Whereas you look at a team like Penn State, they got to go through SMU, Boise State, and Georgia. So Penn State faces one good team. Oregon faces three. How is that fair? And I know people brought up, oh, what about reseeding? Reseeding isn't going to do jack shit. That is going to be useless. The only way reseeding would work is you got to bank on Indiana, SMU, or Clemson in this case to win. Because, again, if all the favorites went out, but Oregon would still have to face Ohio State, as Ohio State is the lowest remaining seed. So reseeding does absolutely nothing. And I saw a post on Twitter talking about a 14-team playoff. A 14-team playoff would have absolutely been perfect. But, if people can put aside their Alabama hate and stop thinking of it as, oh, you're going to expand just to get Bama in. No, 14 teams would legitimately be better because Oregon's, the 8-9 matchup would be Indiana and, or no, it wouldn't be Indiana. It would probably be Indiana and Boise State. That's who Oregon, the winner of that game would face Oregon. That's a good reward for the first round. You would have teams like Texas and Clemson facing each other again, but it would be more, it'd be more deserving for the higher seeds. So I think a 14-team playoff would be much better than this 12-team format because some teams really got screwed. You get screwed for winning your game. You get rewarded for losing your games. It's just confusing here and there. Georgia didn't get totally fucked, but Georgia and the committee were kind of in a bind because last year the thing with Florida State was, oh, their quarterback got injured. And they took him out. They punished them heavily for that. Well, Georgia's quarterback got injured too, and he was out for the game. But because Georgia won, thankfully the committee didn't have to make that decision. But let's keep it a stack. Let's keep it a buck. If Georgia lost that SEC championship and Carson Beck obviously didn't play, do you really think they're going to kick Georgia out? No, they're not. So that was just hypothetical, but luckily Georgia won, took that issue off the committee's hands. It's an extra week for the Beck to rest up, and I'm just glad that that's one less chaotic thing you have to worry about. But also another tough team. The Oregon has the toughest road out of the teams of the bye. The toughest road, period. Wow. The toughest road, period, I would say is Tennessee. Tennessee has to go through Ohio State, Oregon, then probably like Texas, Georgia, Texas, Penn State, but that's crazy. Like, why is the 9th seed the hardest and not the 12th seed? That's why I don't really get. Where if you look at the NFL does the 7 or 14-team playoff perfectly, or 7 on each side perfectly, because the 7 seed in the NFL is the hardest route. You got to go 7 versus 4, or no, 7 versus 3. Wait, I'm so slow, yo. 7 versus 2, and then you face the 1 seed. The NFL does it really good. I think college should do the same with the 14-team playoff. But looking at the current bracket, it's just weird that you have Arizona State and Boise State getting these byes when clearly, they're not. Obviously, they deserve it because they won their conference, but Texas is better than both of those. Ohio State, Tennessee's better than both of those. Penn State's probably better than them. Notre Dame's better than them. So, you push all these teams down, and, that's how you get these, like, weird one-sided brackets, these weird one-sided matchups, because you're elevating these, like, 12 and 9 seeds up crazy amounts in the bracket. That it's just a broken system, to put it simply. It's a broken system, but again, you have to reward conference championships. Because if you look at a game like Texas and Georgia, Texas, I believe, was the 2 seed going into conference championship weekend. Why would they play that game if they weren't getting a bye? If it could only hurt them, because you're already the number 2 or 3 team in the country. You can't get much better. The team you're playing is below you. So, in a sense, yeah, they kind of have to give them a bye to incentivize championships. But this is the result you're going to get. And it's going to trickle down. You're going to get all these weird matchups pushing all these teams down that they really shouldn't have in the bracket, because you got to reward these conference champions. Because I think what they should do is a conference champion should have an auto bid, not an auto buy. If you're to do the top 4 teams, then the bids or the champions just in the field, I feel like that would be much better. And it would just be, it's more of like a pick your poison thing. If you do the auto bids, then a team like Texas in the SEC championship, they're not really going to care. There's no point in them playing. But if you do the auto buys, you're going to get something like this where the field is just really like weird and messed up. The seedings isn't really accurate, and some paths are way easier than others just because of the second round. Facing like Penn State is a powerhouse in the Big Ten, and they get to face a Mountain West team in the second round. That shouldn't really, it's not adding up. Is Boise State 4 spots better than Notre Dame? No, they're not 4 spots better than Notre Dame. They're not 6 spots better than Tennessee. It's just a broken system to have these auto buys. And I mean, it's a system we got now. We can all expect that there's going to be tweaks in the offseason, similar to how when the BCS first came a thing. They had changes 6 out of the first 7 years. I expect the same thing here. 14. They're not going to switch to 14 overnight. It would probably take a few years for that whole process to go through. But there's definitely going to be tweaks in the offseason. But looking at this bracket, if you were to put money, you don't put money on Oregon or Texas, because those teams have, semi-hard path. Texas is facing 12-seeded Clemson, but we know Clemson's a blue blood. Clemson is a legit team, so you got to respect them. That's not going to be an easy out necessarily. But, you don't put money on Ohio State. You don't put money on Tennessee. If you were to put money on a team, but you put it on Georgia, because they face the winner Notre Dame, Indiana, and then likely Penn State. Or you put money on Penn State. Penn State has the best path in the playoff. So, Penn State and Texas have the best path in the playoff, which is weird because shouldn't the top 3 seeds have the best path? That's just how the bracket turns out. And it reminds me, honestly, it's very similar to March Madness, where the 5 and 12 team, that matchup is notorious for being upset just because there's so many teams. It's so jumbled up and just weird, where the underdog almost has a better path than the higher seed. And that's the vibes I'm getting here, where it's in March Madness, the 11 and 12 seeds are likely to make a run. Same here, where the 6 and 5 are likely to make a run, which is just weird. It should not be, because it's football. There's not 64 teams. The hell. Honestly, though, Penn State has the best path. You got to expect them to make a run. They have to. James Franklin's notorious for losing big games, but there's a clear talent difference between Penn State and SMU and Penn State and Boise State. So they should be able to take advantage of that. One thing I am excited for, little side note, is home playoff games. That is going to be absurd. And I'm pretty sure all the slots are at night. I think there's 2 on Sunday, a Friday, and a Saturday, if I'm correct. But a night game in Ohio State or a night game in Penn State, that's going to be crazy. That's going to be electric. If I were to give you a winner in this bracket, I'm going to have to go with Georgia, because Notre Dame, Indiana in the second round is still a pretty good matchup. Plus, they face either Boise or likely Penn State in that third round. I can live with that if you're Georgia. I just think I don't see Oregon making it all the way. I feel like it's such a hard path for them. I don't see Tennessee or Ohio State doing the same thing. The one 8 and 9, I feel have no chance in Oregon, Ohio State, and Tennessee, just because they got such a bad draw on their side. It just sucks. It's just a weird system. It's a broken system. It was good in theory, like, oh, you give a conference champions the bye, and that'll be that. Because if you're giving the conference champions the bye, you got to think of it like how it was last year. Last year, all the 4 teams in the 14 playoff were conference champions. So if you applied the 12-team format last year, it made perfect sense. Perfect sense. But not every season is going to be like last season. Just like not every season is going to be like this season. So, you also kind of hope they don't overplay it. Like, most years are going to be like last year where the conference champion is in the top 4, top 6 of the AP or power ranking, whatever. So, I feel like this is just like a weird year, an anomaly year, if anything. Another team I like is Notre Dame. I feel like the home game against Indiana, I'm feeling pretty good about Notre Dame there. And they match up pretty good against Georgia. Like, they play a physical style. Notre Dame can run the football. They can chew the clock just like Georgia Tech did a couple weeks ago. That was able to put Georgia on the brim, just like Kentucky did early in the season. So I feel like Notre Dame could actually make a run. They get the matchup they want. I would feel much better as a Notre Dame fan against Georgia than I would against Oregon, or that I would against even Arizona State. I feel pretty good if I'm Notre Dame in my path. I'm happy with that. Penn State's obviously the best. Ohio State has it rough. Arizona State and they just got elevated so far. Cam Skattebo keep it going, keep carrying and putting the team on his back. So that'll be left to be seen. But it's just interesting to see. Like, it was good in theory, but there are a lot of flaws about this. Speaking of Georgia, can Carson Beck come back? How's the backup going to do? Are they feeling good about that? Texas, do they have a QB controversy? Because I'm not going to lie, Arch Manning has probably been better, given it hasn't been against, like, top-tier opponents. But Arch Manning has been better, and he's a good running quarterback, which Clemson had problems with against South Carolina a couple weeks ago. So, does Texas start Arch Manning if things start to go bad with Ewers? I feel like that could be something. Ohio State, Tennessee is definitely the best game of this weekend. Ohio State, Tennessee is definitely the best game of the first round. It's just the closest team. But one thing that confuses me when looking at all these matchups is the betting lines. Like, the betting line for all these games is the favorites by 7, which is just, that's not what you should have for a playoff. A playoff should be, like, within 5 points, within 4 points. So, to have Ohio State, Tennessee, and Ohio State's, like, 7.5 favorites, that's dumb. Why is a team a 7-point favorite? But, like, that one doesn't make sense, but you got Penn State and SMU at, I think they're at 9.5, 10.5. That makes sense. Texas at Clemson, that's like 10.5. That's just not a good look. That's not something you want to have if a playoff is an expected blowout. But yeah, quick little ramble, I guess, about the playoff. We'll see how it goes. I feel like this was just like a crazy year, and I talked about it like a few seconds ago, but how last year, like, the 5 champions were the top 5 seeds. So it would have been better last year than this year. This year has been chaos, hectic. Everyone's been mad. Can't make everyone happy, but I'm excited. It was just a quick little ramble, quick reaction to the bracket, and hope y'all good. Type.